Hey, everybody. I am so thrilled to be here, part of VoxCon again, this awesome conference. It went too fast, didn't it? Good grief. I mean, here we are, trying to get these last few morsels of goodness before we go back home, and this all just becomes a fading memory.
Really? Last morsels? That's the best you can come up with? See, these people were ready to like you, but you've lost them now.
I thought I would talk a little bit about how I put together a talk and how I overcome my insecurities.
As if you know anything about either of those things.
I mean, we've all seen our share of bad talks, right? Suffer through boring presentations where we have no idea what they were trying to say.
Kind of like this one. Go on, continue.
I'm assuming that if you're at this conference, then you've got something to say, which is why you're here. And you want to get better at saying it. Isn't that the whole idea? Be you, be heard, find your voice, all that stuff. I was here last year, and Donald Miller, he talked about his story brand concept of clear communication, using the power of story. I mean, not just telling stories, which that's important, but using the actual structure that makes a good story work to be the framework behind really anything we want to communicate. And he was great.
Well, it's too bad he's not here now instead of you.
So, a few months later, I pulled up Donald Miller's podcast, and I noticed that he had a new episode where he was interviewing Andy Stanley. And I thought, my goodness, those two communication powerhouses talking about how to communicate effectively, I mean, that's a conversation I need in my life.
Maybe you should have paid a little closer attention then.
So I'm listening to it, and I'm writing some notes, and they're making a lot of great points about how to focus on one big idea per talk, how to make sure that your points are sticky, how they have a hook, that they've got the right tone. And I keep thinking, I already know these things. These are the same concepts that I use whenever I write songs. And then it hit me. Why don't I approach writing a talk like I approach writing songs?
Oh, you just lost them for sure now. Nobody wants to listen to you humble brag about how many songs you've written.
When I was learning how to write songs, I did have a lot of great teachers, other musicians and record producers, people that I worked with, but also, man, all the great songwriters that I grew up listening to. Because the first breakthrough that I ever really had, I mean, honestly, it was an idea that was so simple that it kind of sounds stupid when you say it out loud. But here it is anyway. If you want to write good songs, write the kind of songs that you'd actually listen to.
Ooh, wow. Did you think of that one all by yourself? I mean, you're right about it sounding stupid.
The same thing goes for when you're putting together a presentation. You need to put together the kind of presentation that you would actually enjoy listening to.
Well, you should have applied that idea to this one. Or is this really the kind of meaningless drivel that you're into these days?
So, I started thinking about how the things that make a great song are the same things that make a great talk. The way they're structured, the importance of setting the right tone up front, reinforcing what you want them to remember with repetition. I mean, there's a lot of overlap because a good framework can help you succeed in spite of your insecurities. Helps you to write something that's easy to follow, easy to remember.
Okay, Paul McCartney. I'm sure they're all just dying to know all about this now. Or at least dying.
See, songs usually have a familiar and a predictable structure. At least the kind of songs that most people like. I mean, they usually go something like this. There's the intro, and then verse 1, chorus, and then verse 2, chorus, and then a bridge, a final chorus, and then some kind of an outro. And every one of those components, see, they have an important role to play if the song is going to work. So let's talk a little bit about how these components relate to writing a talk.
Wouldn't it be awful if, like, your mind went blank right now and you forgot the next thing you were going to say?
So it starts with the intro. You set the scene, you set the tone. You ask questions that you're going to answer throughout your talk. You set up the mystery that you're going to solve. It's the greeting, and it's the transition from whatever was happening before you started talking.
This talk is going to be a complete failure. You are going to be so humiliated.
And then comes verse 1, which is going to be the necessary information about that one thing that your presentation is about. And each talk really should be about one thing, only one thing. If you've got two things to talk about, you should do two talks.
Or pre-record yourself interrupting your talk to make some meta point about insecurities and how your inner voice critic tries to sabotage everything. You're welcome.
I mean, basically, the main job of verse 1 is to get them ready to hear the chorus. Because the chorus is the whole point. It's the thing that you're hoping they're going to remember 10 minutes after you get done talking. It's the way to help them to remember what you were talking about. So it's really got to have some kind of a hook. It's got to stick. And then, like I was saying about songwriting, it ought to be the kind of hook that you would actually like. Something that you put serious thought into. I mean, don't just go with the first cheese ball thing that pops in your mind.
You said it, cheese ball.
So in that first chorus, you just say it. You're just going to make your big point, and then you're going to move on to verse 2. Now, verse 2, that's going to be more information about that one idea, that one thing. And listen, that one thing, man, it better be something that the audience believes they actually need to know. Or you better convince them that they need to know it. But you've got to be disciplined. You've got to stick to that one big thing they need to know, or no one's going to care. And then, of course, the longer the talk, the more verses you can have. But all those verses, they all need to be valuable information about that one big idea, the thing that the chorus is helping them remember.
You're still going? How long's this talk going to be?
Because that's the main job of the chorus. Something to hang the whole presentation on. Something that's going to stick. So every time you come to that chorus, you restate your hook. But then you also add something. Something to put it in a slightly different light. Something to go a little bit deeper. And then after a couple verse-chorus combinations, then it's going to be time to go to the bridge. And I like to think of the bridge as the place where the whole thing comes together.
When are we going to get to the bridge of this train wreck?
And the reason that it's called a bridge in songwriting is because it bridges two choruses together. There should be a slightly different tone to the bridge, like a different emotional impact than the rest of the talk had. It should get to the deepest aspect of the point that you're trying to make. Get to the heart of the matter, how it all fits together, the why.
Hey, I've got a why question. Why would anyone listen to anything you have to say?
And then when you get to the last chorus, repeating the catchiest part of the song, the earworm. In a talk, it's probably a good place to put some practical applications, things that are going to flow from that one big idea that you've been talking about.
Like, for a good time, call 867-5309.
And then there's the outro, the end. How are you going to land your talk? This should answer the questions from the intro, and if you haven't already answered them, it should remind them of what's at stake if they don't do what you're talking about. It could have a twist or a punchline. It can resolve or it can end with tension. But this is the last thing you're going to leave them with. So how do you want to leave it? How do you want them to feel when you're done?
You apparently want them to feel mansplained and confused.
So those are the basic elements that make up most songs. The components that I usually use to organize my presentations, including this one. So the first thing I do is I take a blank sheet of paper or a whiteboard, and I write those things on the left margin. Intro, verse 1, chorus, verse 2, chorus, bridge, chorus, outro. And then I just leave enough space so that I can jot down some of my ideas next to all of those words. And it's just a way for me to get started and to kind of organize my thoughts. Because a good framework, it'll help you get past that writer's block, help you succeed in spite of your insecurities, help you to come up with something that's easy to follow, easy to remember. It'll help you to stand up and say something that you would actually want to listen to. But we've all got insecurities.
He's talking about me.
Public speaking is something that terrifies most people.
It should have terrified you a little more.
See, the thing about coming up with a framework that makes sense to us is it helps us to succeed in spite of those insecurities.
Oh, yeah? How's that working for you, big guy?
Songwriting structures, they make sense to me. So you can try that. That might work for you. But the important thing is to find some kind of a framework that keeps you from staring at that blank sheet of paper, to have a plan for how you're going to build your talks, something that you keep using. Because every time you finish your plan, you're going to get better at it. See, the way to write one good song is to write 100 bad songs first.
So, this is like talk number 67 for you then?
The insecurities never go away.
Everyone here knows more about this subject than you do.
The critical inner voice, it walks up with me every time I do this.
I'm very reliable like that.
I like to think of mine as a mean girl. See, the critical voice, it says the worst things, and you're not going to be able to silence it. But you can learn how to put it in its place. You can answer them. You can stop the emotional death spiral that will kill what you're trying to do. Look, these people in this room, man, they look friendly enough to me. And they're counting on me to say something that's worth listening to for like 15 minutes. They asked me to be here. I'm perfectly qualified to talk about my personal process of how I write a presentation. So would you please just go away and let me finish this in peace? See, that guy, he's the hardest thing that I have to deal with when it comes to doing this. But anyway, that's how songwriting principles help me put together my talks. So find a framework that works for you, because a good framework really can help you succeed in spite of your own insecurities. And it can help you to say something that's easy to follow, easy to remember, something that will stick, something that's going to cut through the noise and help drive the message that you have home. But you're going to make it harder for people to hear what you got to say if you confuse them or if you bore them to death. So just make sure that you're doing the kind of things that wouldn't bore you. Stop just playing it safe. Take chances. Be interesting. Don't tell jokes that you don't think are funny. Don't tell people things they don't need to know. I think you've got something important to say. I think that's why you're here. So find your voice. Find a framework that makes sense to you. And then say that thing. Because whatever it is, the world needs to hear it. Thanks, you guys.
The one and the only. Thank you, Frank.